All I want to do is comic books. So that's what I'll do. Hey there, today I have an unboxing video, and in this video I'm going to open up an order that I placed with Professor's Comics on Atomic Avenue. And I'm really excited. I am not excited because the order has a grail or a mega key or something like that. It's just a nice order of comic books that it's very typical of the books that I'm always picking up. Value picks, minor keys, some filler books, and I always filler books always seems to have a negative connotation, and really what I mean is if I'm looking to complete a run in a series, the books are important, but it's really more of me trying to satisfy that completionist part of my collecting personality. So I do look for some of those books, and it's really just kind of checking all of those boxes for me with an order like this. But I'm always excited to open an order, to sort, to read the comics, to curate them, to catalog, enter the values, see what, books I could possibly press, see what books maybe I would want to get graded. And I've said this before around comic books or a mood. Well, sometimes comic books for me improves my mood. When I have a really busy schedule in real life, I have many moments where I just kind of sit back and just, gosh, I wish I could maybe clone myself or just take a break and focus on comic books. And that's what I'm going to do right now. I'm going to focus on something that provides me with a lot of joy. This hobby has been a big part of my life. Yes, I've taken some breaks, but it's been pretty much my entire life where collecting and sitting down and reading superhero comics, it was one of my first memories as a child. And it's so great that the hobby has evolved and continued to grow and change. And while it fundamentally still has a lot of the same value for me that it had for me when I was younger, it's nice now as an adult where I can get into collecting graded books, signature books, and other forms of comic book related collecting, whether it's original art and so on. And just to see my collection expand and grow and appreciate it, and sitting down and doing a little fingering, going through my short boxes and seeing, what comics I have and just sort of reminiscing. And what I've done now is I've merged my modern collection with my original childhood collection. And so it's nice to go in and see a few books that I picked up recently, all stacked up nice and neatly against a book that I bought 30 years ago. So I want to get to this unboxing. I want to look at the comics and kind of walk you through which books I picked up and why I picked them up, because I'm looking for a little bit of enjoyment. We all have things that we do to keep ourselves entertained, and there's just something about the hobby for me that is a real distraction from all of the noise and the nonsense, where I can just sit down with a nice order like this, open up some great comics, and enjoy just a really nice and pleasant distraction. So let's get to it. Let me unpack this order from Professor's Comics. And if you'll stay to the very end of the video, I will show you what I paid for these books, and we'll compare them to the fair market values and values of these books if I were to get them graded. All right, here we go. Here is the order from Professor's Comics, sent priority mail. This is one thing I noticed with Atomic Avenue. Some of the sellers that offer free shipping, they use media mail, so you have to kind of look out for that. Free shipping is free shipping, I understand, but the way that Professor's Comics works is you do pay for shipping, but I do feel like you're getting a better deal and higher quality books. So I make an exception for Professor's Comics and pay for shipping. So let's go ahead and get this opened up. Okay, finally got through that. It's one of those things where you are kind of paying the price to get these things mailed to you this safely. Professor's Comics, the way that it's shipped, it's kind of a homegrown cardboard mailer, and it's just, there's a lot of tape, and I'm just trying to be super careful with my box cutter to make sure I'm not slicing through the tape, and then I see a line or a slice right through a comic book. So I try and do my best to be very, very careful. But here we go. These are the comics that I got. Can't wait to check them out. This is Hawkeye #3. This is Hawkeye's first solo series. And a good friend of mine, we talk about, things like the first Wolverine limited series. And it's kind of fun. This is a really, really affordable and cheap limited series around the similar time as Wolverine. I think this came out like a year later. I think the Wolverine limited series is 82. This is 1983. And this is the first appearance of Bombshell as well. So you've got that minor character, minor key factor going for you as well. And interesting for me, Mark Grunwald, I always think of him as a writer. I think most people kind of associate him with Captain America, but he did the art as well on this series. Got inks from Bob Layton on the cover of this one, so there may have been some assistance with some, I would say, more traditional artists helping out, but a cool cover nevertheless. Hawkeye #3. Next one is Alpha Flight 33. I'm always on the lookout for this one. I did not pay $1.50. I wish that I did, but this is the first appearance of Lady Deathstrike, who's appeared in the X-Men comics over the years. Great X-Men villain. Cover by Mike Mignola, but I'm always on the lookout for this book. Has a lot of value in high grade in a 9.8. Just kind of giving it a once over. Looks like it has some couple of spine ticks here and there. Definitely a stacking crease. I don't know if that was because of how the books were stacked in here or if it was just the way it was, but most of these books are going to require a press of some kind, maybe a little work with the tack iron, but absolutely great books in high grade. Alpha Flight 33. Next is Ghost Rider 46, a great cover with Vengeance. This is the character Michael Baldino. So in this storyline, spoilers if you haven't read it, Dan Ketch is Ghost Rider. He's presumed to be defeated, and so we've got a story here with Vengeance and just a awesome cover. I mean, Ghost Rider is such an interesting character, but also just the character design. I mean, you can't beat it. Skull, flames, motorcycle, awesome. So they just were kind of going nuts in the 90s. Different Ghost Rider iterations, different types of villains. Vengeance here, one of those really super cool characters. And yeah, it looks to be in good shape. I don't really see any color breaking issues here along the spine. Pretty solid looking copy, so awesome. And this is something too, as we get into the next book with a seller like Professor's Comics, where what I try to do is find sellers that you can just tell they cared about how their books were stored. Like they cared about collecting and curating and really, again, appreciating the hobby. And I know a lot of times I wonder, like, with comic book collecting, are collectors just buying from other collectors? I mean, that's what it feels like with me. I know Capco and Professors, longtime collectors that are now selling their collection or parts of their collection. So I get that we're all kind of buying from each other in a way, but I'm looking for certain things from a seller. And I absolutely know without a doubt that these comics were cared for. And so my thinking is, if we look at the next book, Guardians of the Galaxy #5, which is the first appearance of Angela in Marvel Comics. Now, she first appeared in Spawn #9 from Image Comics, but I love this book as it's her first appearance in Marvel Comics. And if she does make an appearance in the MCU down the road, I do feel like there would be some attraction to this book. So my working theory with buying from a collector that I know really took care of his collection is that the modern books, I believe, have a really good shot at being 9/8 candidates. And as I look at this is one of them. Just sharp corners all around. I'd have to remove it from the bagging board and do more of a detailed grading overview, but just at first glance, yeah, it's a 9/8 candidate. There's maybe a little bit of stack increase there. 9/6 with a quick press probably gets that out. And so what I try and do is get a good mix of some older back issues and books that maybe came out within the last 5 or 10 years, thinking that those more recently released books could be 9/8 candidates. Here's another one, Ironheart #7. I'm really close to having a full run of Ironheart, where it's not her first solo series, but it's her first series titled Ironheart. Prior to this, it was Invincible Iron Man. And just like I said with Guardians number 5, looks to be in fantastic shape. Don't see any spine ticks at all, sharp corners, definitely a 9/8 candidate. Now, kind of jumping back and forth in time, we've got Marvel 2-in-1, number 61. And again, I paid a little bit more than $4. And this is the first appearance of her. And while if you think of her and is her related to him, him being Adam Warlock and her being Aisha, the character from Guardians of the Galaxy, I really like this, not as a book necessarily to spec on, but it's just, I love the ties back to that story. We've got Warlock confirmed in Guardians 3. And this was a value pick. This is a great cover by George Perez. And again, just the condition of this, I may have to open this one up and look at it. I don't know if I can wait to really go ahead and grade this one out. All of these books were purchased in near mint condition. And again, it does vary from seller to seller, but here it is out of the bag and board. And just look, magnificent, sharp corners, great spine, sharp corner down there. I mean, is this a 9/8 candidate? I mean, maybe there's just a little bit of something there. Could be some dirt or just a little bit of ink. Turning it over, this is where I start to see a few little problems right in there. There you go. There's a crease and some creasing here. But an opportunity, I think, for some improvement. These are color breaking right there. So that probably throws my idea of that being a 9/8 candidate out the door. But could be, again, in that 9.4, 9.6 range. And the way that I do my value tracking and my pricing and trying to figure out which what books are deals and where do I find books and sort them by the lowest risk, that's one of those books where there is some value in that book, anywhere in the low 9s all the way up through a 9.8. And so I will pay accordingly for a book in near mint when the risk is low on a book like that. That's going to be a great book in high grade. You want every book in a 9.8, that goes without saying, but when it's not a 9.8, because most collectors that are selling to buyers or collectors, they're not just going to have 9.8s lying around and selling them at 50% fair market value. But a book like that in high grade, there's still value there. Let's keep going. Back to some modern books. This is Moon Knight number 11. This is from the Jeff Lemire run. And I do see a couple of problems here. So my theory's not always accurate. That's a pretty nasty gash right there in the middle of the book. Probably is already you're probably working on a 9.4 backwards. That could be a little bit of color rubbing, if another spine tick there. So you could be talking around the 9 or 9.2 range on this book. There's a couple of finger bends at the top there, right in there. And that could be a tear altogether. So I'm not always correct. It's just don't know until I get the books, and also it's just kind of building off of the experience with these sellers. That's not typical of a modern, recently released book that I would get from Professor's Comics to have that book. Now we're talking if that is truly a tear, it could be somewhere in the 7 or 8 range. Purchased that book near mint, so I didn't pay a lot for it, but a little disappointed there on that one. But more often than not, those recently released moderns are somewhere averaging in the 9.6 range. Next up is Marvel Point 1, or I guess just Point 1, number 1, or Marvel Point 1, One Shot 1. Nevertheless, this is the first appearance of Sam Alexander. Another book I always keep my eye on. A bit of a tougher book. It's a thicker, more expensive kind of one-shot cover by Adam Kubert. There was a little bit of speculation on this book because we've got Defender Strange up here as it related to the Multiverse of Madness, but I picked this up specifically for the Sam Alexander appearance. I'll have to see if we've got some more like color rubbing issues in here, but looks to be pretty strong, pretty solid, high grade copy. So I don't see any issues that the Moon Knight book had. So happy with that one. And last couple. Here we have Star Wars Force Awakens number 4. And as a Star Wars fan, I'm always on the fence with the new trilogy as far as am I going to accept it as part of the Star Wars lore? But I think the way that the Star Wars universe is moving forward. It's just going to be accepted, and it could be kind of a little bit like my working theory around multiverse and secret wars and incursions, where I think at the end Marvel's going to pick up the best bits that's left over and move forward. I think they're kind of doing that with Star Wars as well. They're thinking about certain characters and making them more like Easter eggs, but not necessarily full backstory and lore on some of these characters. And some might argue one of the best pieces from Force Awakens was the glimpses of the Knights of Ren. And this is their first cover appearance right there. Not a great cover. It's mostly Rey. I understand that. But it is technically a first appearance, first cover. And I don't know if that does that count as first cameo cover appearance. I don't know. I don't know how it works on the inside. If that were on the inside cover and that was the Knight's first appearance, they'd probably call it a cameo, but because it's on the cover, it's just first appearance. It's really kind of muddy, and if you're just kind of like picking this up and looking at it, you can kind of make out Kylo Ren, but you wouldn't necessarily know specifically that behind them is the Knights of Ren. But didn't have this issue and wanted to pick it up, and again, thought that I'd have a good shot at it being a 9.8. It feels like there's a bit of a crease right in there. Again, probably just needs a quick press to kind of smooth things out. I do notice a couple of spine issues there, so that's too bad if those are in fact color breaking, and I believe that they are. So that's unfortunate. Kind of half and half in this order as far as these moderns being 9.8 candidates, but still, I'd gladly take a shot with this seller. Last book is Sandman 14. This is The Doll's House, Part 5. I'm continuing to take my time with the Netflix series, watching one episode like every couple of weeks, every 2 or 3 weeks, like really just enjoying it and trying not to binge it. It's a fascinating series. I'm glad it's coming back for a season 2. And this was one of those books that I was talking about. It's kind of like a filler for me, where I am trying to complete a full run of Sandman. And then at some point I will circle back when I'm able to strike and when the timing is right on issues 1 and 8. But for now, picking up these single issues is my focus. This, unfortunately, is not a 9.8 candidate. Same kind of problem, almost the exact same defect as that Force Awakens 4, just 2 color-breaking spine ticks right there, so that's unfortunate. So looking at it, it's that first glance, that first assessment just sort of looks like a 9 or a 9.2. So not too bad. And it's really tough where, you have a seller that's just listing everything as near mint. I take the average across all of these books, and then that average grade across all of them sort of builds a confidence factor when you're buying from some of these sellers, where you know that not every book is going to be perfect, but you know that there will be a nice selection, a kind of a subsection that will be in that 9.4, 9.6, 9.8 candidate range, and it's worth a shot. So that's kind of what this order is. So I love it. Great group of books. Let me show you what I paid for these and compare the cost against the fair market value for the books raw, and see if any of these books have value if they were professionally graded. All right, here is the order that I placed with Professors Comics on Atomic Avenue on December 26, 2022. I paid $85.85 to have these books sent to me, and I had to pay the $12.10 to have the books shipped, which again, if I'm factoring the higher grade quality of the books, the quality of shipping, the timeliness of shipping, and the prices being, I don't want to say adjusted, but certainly leaning towards one of the more affordable sellers on the platform, that's where things even out a little bit, so I don't mind paying that. And what I end up doing is taking that $12.10 and distributing it across each book in the order to get the true cost of each book. And if my math is correct down here, the total cost across 10 books will match what's on the invoice, and it does in this case at $85.85. So what I'd like to do is compare the total cost here in column Z against the cover price fair market value. And the cover price fair market value, as I define it, is either the raw fair market value of the book in near mint or the raw fair market value of any other grade if the value is higher. Right or wrong, that's my formula. It kind of gives me a general idea of what the book is worth. And then I compare it here to column Z just to see what kind of value I've added to my collection just if these books were kept raw. And in this case, I've added over $100 of value to my collection when you compare what I paid for the books against the FMV. So even after that $12.10 shipping cost, you can see here, Alpha Flight 33, I paid a total of $12.21, and it's a $23 book. Point One, the most valuable according to cover price at $41, I paid $19.21 for a nice $21.79 ad there. And as you're kind of going through each line, you can see every book here, it's positive, which is great. Marvel 2-in-1 61, a $37 book, and I paid $17.21 for that one. So really, really happy here from a raw book value perspective. My intent is not to take all of these books and just throw them on eBay and label them as near mint. I'm always purchasing back issues to see if there's a way that I can improve the book or if they're worthy of sending in for professional grading. Is there value there? And in the long run, what I'm doing is I want to always think about upgrading my collection. So in many of these cases, except for I think Point One, I do have a CGC 9.8 of that book, but all of the others, I don't have a CGC graded copy of those books. So my sort of collecting philosophy, if you will, is let me first acquire the comic, let me assess it, let me grade it, let me figure out if I want to send it in for professional grading. And then over time, I want to consider upgrading the book if it isn't a 9.8. Now, I will be grading these later and putting in my grades, but as we know, a near mint copy is supposed to be a 9.4. So if all of these books did grade out at a 9.4, I want to see if there is some value in a CGC graded 9.4. And the values are probably what I would expect in an order like this. Alpha Flight 33 at $50 and a 9.4. That's great. I love that $12 purchase for a chance at a $50 CGC 9.4. That's again why I don't mind paying that price for that book, because you want to create some distance between your purchase price and a raw copy that you're buying online, because like I said, most sellers are not shipping you 9.8s raw. They're keeping them for themselves and grading them. So I just sort of assume that they're all 9.4s, and we've got some nice values here. Marvel 2-in-1, $72, which is great. Sandman 14, $59. Point One, that's tough. You got $41 raw, $42 graded. So if that one doesn't grade out, that would be worth potentially flipping at a price more closer to the FMV. And even Ironheart 7, that's surprising, in a 9.4 is $30. Now, would I send all of these books to CGC in hopes to get a 9.4? You can see here it's not financially smart, because you would lose $15.74 if all of these books came back in a 9.4. So it doesn't make financial sense to send all of them. But these calculations also help me figure out which books to send. So if I was not going to touch Marvel 2-in-1 61 and hope that it got a 9.8 and it came back a 9.4, still after all of the grading fees and shipping, it would be $22.11 of value added. Same thing for Sandman 14, 1661, and so forth. But then you look at a book like Hawkeye #3, if that one's a 9.4, you're better off just buying it slabbed at $16.50. Now, just for fun, I like to see the maximum or ceiling for this order, just to kind of see what values we're dealing with. And if all of these books were a 9.8, which we can tell clearly, even looking through the bag, that some of them have color breaking ticks that would not get a 9.8. So while I realize that not all of these books are a 9.8, we clearly saw that where we have color breaking spine ticks on several of these. The Moon Knight 11 looked probably the worst of the bunch. So I do understand that, but my theory is always just try and buy valuable comics. And like I said, then kind of figure out where that book grades out, and then try and move from that and start upgrading it. And as you can see with these numbers, this order had the potential to be awesome. It was a $1,051.63 potential order on 10 very random comic books that I purchased from this seller on Atomic Avenue. We've got Sandman 14 at $264, which I really thought Marvel 2-in-1 61 would be more than that, at around $167 for that one. Alpha Flight 33, I think if you're an X-Men fan, that's a key for you. $214 in a 9.8 there. And again, Moon Knight 11, it wasn't going to have that much value in a 9.8. Not bad at $78, but still, that one's probably going to grade out somewhere in the 7 or 8. Guardians of the Galaxy 5, surprisingly, only 92 bucks. I would think that that one would be going for a little bit more. I think there was some speculation about her showing up in Thor Love and Thunder, and then she did, and there really wasn't any mention of her there at all. So I think that maybe it's just another character that we're waiting for the next round of speculation on. But I love running these numbers. I love thinking about it. I love just, it doesn't matter. These are my books. It's my collection. I'd love to speculate. What if they're 9.8s? What are they worth? You know, which books are listed as keys by the different online entities? Which books are being speculated on? I love all of it. Some of these will contribute to some sequential runs and fill in the gaps in my collection of those runs. And at the end of the day, it puts me in a better mood. I truly, truly love this stuff. I'm staring at the covers like this one. I remember creating the value pick graphic for this, going, man, we all miss George Perez. He did the cover on this, and just looking at the details of his thing, and we got Starhawk here, and just what a great book. So I'm just very, very fortunate and lucky and happy to add that to my collection. And opening up a great order of comic books like this was just the boost that I needed to get on with my day. Thanks for watching, happy collecting, and see you next time.